Oof, my Christmas tree is poking my back. Hey you guys, my name is Jacqueline. I am a corporate flight attendant. Welcome to my YouTube channel, Jacqueline Travels. Today we're talking about all things that are actually pilot related. I'm going to be sharing some terms that I've heard my pilots say when I first became a commercial flight attendant 7 years ago, or they could be more recent terms that I picked up when I became a corporate flight attendant a little over 2 years ago. I had done a flight attendant terms video, I think it was earlier this year in the summer, and I had a lot of people ask me to do one for the pilots. So I thought back to my conversations with the pilots, my post-flight briefs with my pilots, my pre-flight briefs with the pilots, and just random things that I've heard them say over the years. And I wrote them down, but I also did get help for this vlog. One of my viewers, whose name is George, reached out to me and he gave me a long list of terms to cover. So I hope you all enjoy this video. George, I especially hope that you enjoy this video. All right, now speaking of George, the first pilot term that I'm going to start out with is actually the term George. Now, I didn't know this one until my viewer George brought it to my attention. So I did do some research and I'll actually just read you the definition because again, this was not a term I was familiar with, so I don't want to explain it in ways that I would know how to explain it. Does that make any sense? What I learned about George. George is the plane's autopilot system. The universal nickname for autopilot is actually George. The autopilot system is commonly used when the plane reaches cruising altitude or when the pilot has been flying for more than a certain amount of hours. None of that really matters. We all kind of know what autopilot is. I know flight attendants bust pilots' chops all the time saying, all you guys do is take off and land. Autopilot is really who's flying the plane. But now I know to say, George is really who's flying the plane. Okay, the next term that was introduced to me when I became a flight attendant was the phrase Zulu time or UTC. And I first noticed this when I was a commercial flight attendant. I had gone into the flight deck during a flight to relieve one of the pilots. He was taking a quick restroom break. This is totally standard practice, by the way. All airlines in the US do it. And I was looking at what looked like a clock, but I realized the time was completely off from where we were. I asked the remaining pilot who was in the flight deck, was it a timer? Did they need to reprogram the clocks? Like, what was going on with this false time? I was alerted that I was actually looking at Zulu time or UTC time and not the time that it was where we were. So basically, it is a universal time. All the clocks in the world are calibrated to this specific time. It's a 24-hour clock, and it's basically just a universal aviation time that's kept by all pilots. So if you wanted to reference Zulu time based on where you were, you would say Zulu -4 if you were 4 hours behind Zulu time, or Zulu plus wherever you were at that point. Okay, the next phrase I heard when I was a commercial flight attendant, but I really didn't think about it that much until I became a corporate flight attendant, and it's just because I heard it much more as a corporate flight attendant than I ever did as a commercial flight attendant. But there's a phrase called Wingwalker, and those fancy private jets fly into smaller airports, and sometimes traffic is very heavy at these smaller airports. So your plane might be parked very tightly in between two other private jets, and the person who is called the wing walker will walk next to the wings to make sure that the wings of your private jet are not going to hit another private jet. They walk with the wings to ensure that the plane will not come in contact with anything else in its way. Pilots only have limited visibility in the flight deck, and that's why they require the assistance of wing walkers. The next phrase that you might hear a pilot say is a go around. I've actually blogged about this. I referred to it as an aborted landing, and it sounds like just what we're talking about. The pilots were getting ready to land the plane, and for a number of reasons, it wasn't safe to land the plane anymore. So they revved the engines, they started climbing again. They chose to do a go around, which is circle back around to the airport and come in for a safer approach. This is actually quite common. It happened to me a lot during my commercial flight attendant days, and it has happened to me, I think, only once since I became a corporate flight attendant. So if you're a passenger and you've ever experienced this, it definitely feels scary. It will startle you. It's not something that you're expecting to happen, but it's done for 100% safety reasons. So it's not technically a dangerous maneuver. So yes, it might feel scary. No, it's not really anything for you to worry about as a passenger. All right, looking at trip sheets as a flight attendant has definitely changed from my commercial flight attendant days to my corporate flight attendant days. When I was a commercial flight attendant, it would say CA for captain, FO for first officer, FA1, 2, 3, 4, 5, however many flight attendants you needed, and all of their names. When I became a corporate flight attendant, things are done a little differently on the private jets. You have the PIC, which is the pilot in command, and you have the SIC, which is the second in command. So basically, the pilot in command, or the PIC, is the same thing as the captain, and the SIC could technically still sit in the left seat and fly captain position, but on this particular flight, they're acting the same way a first officer would act if you're comparing corporate flying to commercial flying. The next phrase is short field, and it's not the actual definition that was new to me, it was just hearing it referred to as a short field. On both the commercial airplanes and the private jets, the pilots will let you know if it's going to be a quick taxi and you need to have the passengers down, items stowed, and buckled into your jump seat in a short amount of time. I'm definitely familiar with hearing information like that during the pre-flight brief. Short field is, I guess, the more technical term that pilots use when they're describing a runway that's shorter in length. You could have a crew conversation about a short field before you take off. Again, flight attendants have everything ready in a very timely manner. For flight attendants, it's going to look like we are speeding towards the end of the runway, but we need to use the entire runway to be able to take off successfully. Don't be worried, standard procedure. Or this could be brought up when you were landing. Hey, flight attendants, we are landing on a short field. We will be landing and hitting the brakes pretty hard. Make sure all items are very securely secured. All right, the letters VFR are up next, and that stands for Visual Flight Rules. This is something that a flight attendant would never say in their normal flying conversation. This is strictly to do with pilots. And basically, VFR, Visual Flight Rules, is when pilots can use visual cues around them to land an airplane. They're able to operate just using visual reference. They don't need assistance from any radar on the ground or anything like that. And if there's any pilots out there who want to elaborate on this, please do so. Again, I'm a flight attendant. I'm just relating these terms as I understand them as a flight attendant. So your 2 cents would definitely be welcomed here. All right, the next thing that we're going to be talking about is the souls on board. Both commercial flight attendants and corporate flight attendants verify how many passengers are on board, but in addition to the passengers on board, we also count flight crew. So souls on board is how many total breathing people are on board that aircraft. And this is important information for fueling and weight and balance, but also if there is a mid-air emergency and you're gonna have a crash landing, the first responders know how many people they should expect to be saving, assisting in the rescue, etc., etc. Not a fun thing to talk about, but it's a reality. Okay, a phrase that George had brought up was keep the blue side up. And I didn't do any research on this because I figured I just knew what he was talking about. And you know what they say about people who assume? I probably shouldn't be doing that. But when you were looking in the flight deck, there are a million different instruments in there to let you know that the plane is operating the way it's supposed to be operating. And you will see a circle, and the top half is blue and the bottom half is brown, and you'll see some wings. So basically, what I would say it is it's a visual level. It lets you know when the wings are exactly level. You always want to keep the blue side above the brown side because the blue side represents the sky. So I personally do not want to be on an airplane that's flying upside down. Keep the blue side up. All right, moving on to 3 in the green. When I sit in the flight deck for a landing, I have picked up on what 3 in the green means. It's when the pilots put the landing gear down. There's a light for the nose gear, and then there's a light for the 2 wheels in the back. I can't tell you what they're called. Again, I'm just the flight attendant here. But you want all 3 of those lights to turn green because that is the airplane's way of letting you know all 3 wheels are down. The landing gear is working properly. You will be able to land without an issue, as long as you're a pilot who's good at landing. All right, and the last phrase that I'm gonna talk about is NOTAMs. And I remember I had a brief with my pilots and we were flying to Florida, and number 45 had some tour going on, and Air Force One was going to be flying in Florida too. So we were restricted on what time we could land and flying over certain airspace and different things like that. And the pilots kept saying, oh, we have a NOTAM for this. Oh, we have a NOTAM for that. And I spoke up and I said, hey, I don't know what a NOTAM is. And my pilots just let me know it stands for Notice to Airmen. NOTAM. It's just a way to alert pilots of any unusual activity that might be going on where they're flying. And then I said, well, we should just change the name to NOTAP, Notice to Air People, because they're lady pilots too. But that's a whole nother story. So those are all the phrases I will be covering today. Thank you, George, for sending me good suggestions. And thank you to everyone who reached out on the FA terms video saying that they wanted to hear some pilot terms as well. If you guys have any questions, comments, thoughts, or concerns, post those down below for me. Please leave me a thumbs up for this video, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel so you don't miss out on any future flight attendant videos. If you are looking for me on social media, my Twitter is @JackTravels, that is JAC Travels, and my Instagram is Jacqueline Travels. It's spelled the same way it is right here on YouTube. So happy Vlogmas. Thank you for watching. I will talk with you guys soon. Bye.